I actually got goosebumps because I remember thinking, this is people of action. This is not bureaucracy where it's taking 6 months to activate anything. These are people, boots on the ground. There's a need. Let's make it happen. We have the resources, and not every club could contribute, but those that could, we have the resources. We're going to be people of action and do something today.
Yes, so the wind in our sails, so to speak, is the Rotary Foundation. It is a highly respected foundation. There is a Canadian arm of it, the Rotary Foundation of Canada. So people who make donations in Canada can get tax receipts for it. But the interesting thing about the foundation is that it has been rated as a 4-star, 5-star, the top rating by Charity Navigator, because it is very transparent. It is very clear about the amount of money that is reserved for administration, and that's 10%, which if you look at other foundations or organizations, they tend to go a little higher than that. So 10% for administration. But the interesting thing about it is when we as Rotarians or individuals here in Southern Alberta make a donation to the foundation, half of that amount comes back to our district so that we can offer grants to our local Rotary clubs.
Welcome back to Hear Me Out with Belinda. Thanks for joining me. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Manon Mitchell, our Rotary District Governor from District 5360. Welcome, Manon.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Belinda, today.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk all about Rotary today.
Oh, yes. I love talking about Rotary. Yeah.
So I remember I'm the current president of the Rotary Club of Okotoks, and I think my first meeting with you would have been what they call the PELS, which I think is President-elect Training.
Learning session.
Learning session, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would have been, as the incoming district governor, you would be presenting your vision, I guess, for the year. And I remember you said yes. That's how you became a Rotarian. Do you want to tell me just a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Saying yes has been something that I see as the propellant of my life, actually, when I look back in the rearview mirror. And with respect to Rotary, it happened in 2010 when a friend of mine who plays in the Calgary Civic Symphony, and I played in the Calgary Civic Symphony, and I've known him for years and years. I started playing there in 1993, but it wasn't until 2010 that he invited me to come and play violin with him at his Rotary Club Christmas breakfast meeting. And of course I said yes, and then I said, well, okay, where and when? And he said, well, it's at the Sheraton Eau Claire in downtown Calgary, but you have to be there at 6:45 in the morning. And I was a little taken aback by that, but I still said yes. I went, and we had a wonderful time playing Christmas carols, but I observed all of these people my age interacting and having a lot of fun. And I went home and I told my husband, this is an adult play date. And I asked Carl, the gentleman who had asked me to come and play, if I could come to a regular meeting, because this was a little unusual being a Christmas party. I went back in January. Their first meeting, they had a guest speaker who was the chief of police of the Calgary Police Force. I thought, wow, this small group of people can attract such a wonderful speaker. But I also discovered what else, all of the things that our police force does to help in the community, other than, giving people like me a parking tickets or speeding tickets. So I thought, this is kind of interesting. And I went back home. I told Kurt, my husband, is that we need to look into this a little bit more. We had been to Nepal 2 years before that, and we saw the plight of people there and the poverty and all of the good that could potentially be done in working with local communities in Nepal. And I thought that's the way, Rotary is potentially the way that we can make a bigger difference in the world. And I always think of it as a big lever to make a world of difference. So I said yes. I said yes to membership. And the journey since then has been nothing but spectacular. Saying yes was a really important thing. And it's very interesting. You and I are taking our leadership year, big leadership year as women in Rotary, and we have other also presidents who are women in our district. And our number of women is increasing slowly but surely, but it's just not fast enough for me. So this is why I love being in leadership position, because I can then use that Rotary lever and impact and make a change.
Yeah. And I think that you touched on a few things there that I want to come back to. So I think we'll start with making a difference in communities. And so when I joined Rotary just over 4 years ago, it was because I had just started my hearing clinic here in Okotoks. And actually a client had said to me, Belinda, you should join the Rotary Club. And so I was like, okay, I'll go investigate. And I had reached out to a Rotary member and had attended my first meeting. And the same thing, like I had joined with the intent of doing business networking, because that's what I think a lot of people think of Rotary clubs. But I found a connection to people that were like-minded, right? That wanted to do better in the community, that were, that service above self, people of action, which is all the, the Rotary taglines. But they were genuinely living that, they were out in the community trying to make it better. And if we can make our communities better and stronger, then we can impact communities worldwide, right? So I think that's part of the vision there. So yeah, like you said, and now into the woman in leadership. I think you mentioned it earlier. It was 1988 when the first women were allowed into Rotary clubs internationally. But I don't think all clubs had a woman in 1988. I think it could have taken a few more years. And now to integrate women and their women in leadership coming in as well. And I think the landscape is changing. I think that's the one thing I've noticed about my Rotary club is, Rotary is a service club, right? It's a not-for-profit. It's a service club. It's doing things, like I said, within the local community and then internationally. And when I look at not-for-profits in my own life, I'll go back to, when I'd first immigrated from South Africa. And we really couldn't afford to register our kids in activities, at the time. And because both my husband and I were working, we were really hustling to try build a better life, for ourselves. There was no free handouts for us. It almost worked against us when we went to these some of these not-for-profits. So we couldn't get any help. And so what I like about Rotary is that they can partner with these newer not-for-profits where those limitations are not there, And so the one that comes to mind actually is something like My City Care in Okotoks, and it's a self-referral. They're not checking your bank statements. If a person has a need, they're there to help, whether it's packing a school backpack. And that's what I like about Rotary, is that we can pivot. We're not stuck in these rules of, we only help X. We can help anybody, right? If somebody has a good idea or somebody is in need, we can go out and find a way to help them.
Absolutely. I want to get back to the idea of business networking. That was how Rotary started. It was business networking. It was Paul Harris, who was a lawyer in Chicago, and he found himself in Chicago after his studies and everything, and he didn't know anybody. And he bumped into a friend of his from university, bumped into him on the street, and they started meeting on a regular basis. And they invited a couple of other of their friends, and it was these 4 guys that started this business meeting, and they would go to each other's business, physically their business, every week. And they rotated these locations, hence the word Rotary. So that's where Rotary started, was business networking. And when they started growing the initial club, they would invite people of different professions, what they used to call classifications. Because the idea was if you join our Rotary Club, you must do business with the other people in the club. So they were helping to support each other business-wise that way and learning from each other about their business as they would rotate the meeting between their different businesses. So that was very interesting. And so they grew, and then they finally decided to do something for their community because they thought, they started reflecting on their businesses, their wealth, their privilege, everything that they could do because they were business owners or they had really great professions. And they started looking outward at the community and wondering, how can we help others other than each other? And that was the start of the first service project in Rotary, which was putting public toilets in downtown Chicago. So, Rotary has this perhaps perception that we do a lot of wells and clean water. Well, it's rooted right back to the early days of Rotary, where they established public toilets for both men and women. Yeah. And so that's how it grew. It was from business to business, and was just a wonderful opportunity for people to get to know each other and support each other that way in business.
Yeah.
And yes, women in Rotary didn't start till 1988. Rotary started in 1905, so it's taken a long time, but there was a trailblazer in California, and Sylvia Whitlock is her name, and she was a school principal. And her and many other teachers joined the local Rotary Club. And at that time, they just put their initial and last name so they wouldn't be recognized as women. But they wanted to help their community as well. So that came to a decision of the Supreme Court in the United States in 1988 that said service clubs must include women or should not discriminate against women. Yeah. So it was a long journey to get there, but we're there, and it is a wonderful opportunity for women to step up to leadership positions. Sometimes some of us don't get that opportunity in the workplace. Mm-hmm. This is a wonderful place to be able to explore your leadership abilities in sort of a leadership lab while doing good in your community. And, the idea of helping out in the community always starts with one person's idea. So it's wonderful to attract new people in Rotary because then you get new ideas. And with new ideas comes new ways of helping out in the community, both locally and internationally, and then making a difference. There's not too many places where you can have a real impact on people's lives, and Rotary is that place, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we never get to see the beneficiaries, but other times in our own local communities we do. When we help out at food banks or do fundraisers to support other organizations in town, you see these people. They're on our streets, they're in our malls, they're in our grocery stores, they're sitting at the clinic beside us. We see them. Yeah. So it's lovely to have that direct impact.
And I think just touching on, you said the women in leadership, right, getting that opportunity. Rotary is a safe place. Your Rotary Club does become like an extension of your family or just a very close friend,
Mm-hmm.
And when you're, being the current president and having to run board meetings, I had done it as a volunteer on the school. I think they would call it like the parent council or the friends of the school. But this is a whole different dynamic, when you're getting into there, and there's a lot of education that you can look through to see, how to run that board meeting, correctly, or how to present. And so going back to, there's a lot of personal growth. Yes, you're giving up your time, but Rotary is actually giving a lot back as well if you're open to that personal growth within leadership as well.
Indeed, yes. I had never run a board meeting, and the education and the support was there. Mm-hmm. you follow the pattern. You have to step a little beyond your comfort zone. That's absolutely for sure. Yeah. When you stand on the edge of your comfort zone, you said yes, now you're standing there going, okay, what am I going to do next? It feels uncomfortable, but that is the position of growth. And once you go beyond that, you never shrink back, which is very interesting. So you get to chair board meetings or even chair a committee meeting. Let's say you have an idea to create a community garden in a particular area in your town or city, and you want to run with it. You for sure you'll find people who want to help out. You get to chair that meeting. You get to develop a project plan. Project management is not in everybody's career. It was for mine. So this was really easy for me to fit into because I was a project manager in IT. So I knew all the components I needed to put together. But again, there is support and there's learning sessions. We have a fantastic library of learning workshops online. Plus, we do in-person learning as well. And you get to learn these things. And then you get to take your project from ideation all the way to actually executing the project and seeing the impact after it. So if you have that garden built and you see people planting things and enjoying being outside and planting veggies or flowers, whatever, it changes a person. And we like to say that we create lasting change in the world, in our communities, but surprisingly in ourselves.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that personal growth. And what I like about is I just came back, we had our big district conference, probably not this past weekend, the weekend before, which I think at one point on the Saturday, was it 410 Rotarians we had in the room? Which is amazing, right? That representatives from all the district clubs sharing ideas, learning, how to connect with each other and obviously around the world. And I made a new friend, and I'm not going to say her name because we didn't pre-discuss it, but there's a new committee, which is, and I know that I'm going to mess up the acronym, but it's about sustainability and talking about that. Do you know what it is?
Yes. So this is called a Rotary Action Group, and Rotary has got 7 areas of focus. Protecting the environment is one of those. It's the latest area of focus that was introduced by Rotary, I think maybe 8 years ago. And with each area of focus, we have what are called Rotary Action Groups. And these are groups of individuals who are either experts in that field or very interested and want to learn more. So yes, we love acronyms in Rotary. So the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, SRAG, as we call it, is a wonderful group of people, think tank, advocacy, and they communicate via newsletters, via different programs. I know every year there's a vegan challenge that they do. There's anything that you can imagine around the environment. It is represented in that Rotary Action Group, and people can be part of it. And people who are not Rotarians can belong to these Rotary Action Groups and get that information and participate at whatever level they choose to do so.
That's it's a great interest for me. I do believe, obviously, in being, well, kind of, to animals, but particularly it's the health aspects. So going back to that local community, I truly believe that dairy was very impactful in my mom's death and her cancer. And also we know that things like bacon and cold cuts are listed on, the World Health Organizations as Class A, cancer causing, carcinogenics, that was the word I was looking for. So we know that there's strong links, just like we know that there's strong links of asbestos, causing cancer. There's these strong links of these cold cuts causing cancer, but yet we serve them every single day in our schools. And that's something that I thought, if we can just start changing, we can make our community healthier. We can make our planet healthier. So that's why I'm actually pretty excited about that. At our Rotary Club, we're having a guest speaker beginning of June. She's a local family doctor. She has actually built her practice on plant-based wellness, which I think will be interesting and tie into that whole sustainability. So I think for me, it's about all these different things. Rotary is remaining. I think Rotary is still so impactful because we pivot, right? It's not stuck in the old ways. Somebody has a new idea and we get on board. And it's not about being trendy. It's about what's going to have an impact to people's lives and to making our world better. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I see these Rotary Action Groups as really boots on the ground, easy to connect to opportunities for learning and then processing that information and then jumping into action. So all these opportunities that come at us as Rotarians through these Rotary Action Groups really present a different way of moving forward in your life and taking your own personal experience, learning more about that, and then moving forward. So in my case, it was dealing with type 2 diabetes and looking at how, well, number one, can it be reversed? And the good news is that in most cases, or a lot of cases, it can be, but it does require a change in diet. And I felt like I was the only person on the planet that was going to now be more, well, I guess we would call it flexitarian. So a lot vegan, but if meat is being served, I will eat it. And I felt very much alone in that journey, which was a bit of a struggle and continues to be because it's not easy being vegan. And SRAG had a whole series of webinars, online webinars about being more plant-based. And I saw role models. And the one in particular that I love to share about was this gentleman from India who actually climbed Mount Everest as a vegan, a true 100% vegan. And it was fascinating to hear his story of it wasn't only the food, but it was also his clothing. So there was no leather in any of his equipment. And he worked hard with the suppliers to get the right gear because you need very specialized gear to go at that altitude. And that journey is just absolutely incredible. Anyway, so that Rotary Action Group now opened up a door that I could walk through. And now in my own personal journey, never mind being a Rotarian, but as a human being dealing with this particular situation, I can now take more steps forward in my journey towards healing. Had it not been for that, I think I would still be sitting in my corner going, I'm so alone trying to do this. Yeah. So the community support was in thought, right? Community support in thought, not only just in actions, but things that I can learn about and then process and then see how I can adapt that to my life.
Yes. I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that story with me that, you're not alone, right, in your thought. I'm going to touch a little bit of the people of action, actually. It just brought to mind, I think, well, maybe people don't know, but Rotarians do contribute to the Rotary Foundation, and each club is responsible for doing some, raising funds, and then they get to choose how to use it, number one, within their local community, but also internationally. So it can be things like, joining with Homes of Hope projects. But one that comes to mind where being a newer Rotarian of 4 years was about 2 years ago, and I think the district conference was in Drumheller that year. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you were there as well. But I remember that there was some severe flooding happening in Brazil, I think, at the time. And we do have some exchange students, which is, for anybody listening, an exchange student is generally a high school student that applies and then exchanges to a different country with Rotary host families. And so we had a couple of exchange students in Canada in our district from Brazil, one of them being, her family was quite significantly affected. And that room donated money immediately. Like there were various memberships, they got together within their own Rotary clubs and they raised money to send to that Rotary club that had been impacted, by that flood. And there was no doubt because Rotary does keep good records of everything. So we knew that the money would be going to the victims there. And I actually got goosebumps because I remember thinking, this is people of action. This is not bureaucracy where it's taking 6 months to activate anything. These are people, boots on the ground. There's a need. Let's make it happen. We have the resources. And not every club could contribute, but those that could, we have the resources. We're going to be people of action and do something today.
Yes, so the wind in our sails, so to speak, is the Rotary Foundation. It is a highly respected foundation. There is a Canadian arm of it, the Rotary Foundation of Canada. So people who make donations in Canada can get tax receipts for it. But the interesting thing about the foundation is that it has been rated as a 4-star, 5-star, the top rating by Charity Navigator, because it is very transparent. It is very clear about the amount of money that is reserved for administration, and that's 10%, which if you look at other foundations or organizations, they tend to go a little higher than that. So 10% for administration. But the interesting thing about it is when we as Rotarians or individuals here in Southern Alberta make a donation to the foundation, half of that amount comes back to our district so that we can offer grants to our local Rotary clubs. And we have very generous donors in our district, which allow our district foundations committee to make possible a large number of local project grants as well as international grants. When we work internationally, we always work with a Rotary club in another country. It's always a pair.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that the fun fact is that there are more countries in Rotary than there are countries in the United Nations.
Wow, you should say that again. That's pretty impressive.
There are more countries in Rotary, 1.2 million Rotarians around the world in more countries than there are in the United Nations. And Rotary International has a seat at the United Nations as an organization and not a country. Many of our Rotarians when was the UN founded? In 1940s, right after the Second World War, possibly. Yeah. Many Rotarians helped build the United Nations because there were Rotarians in other countries. So that was another fun fact. But the projects always are initiated by the Rotarians in the clubs. A Rotarian sees a need in the community, brings it back to the club. The club says, yes, let's do this. The club can then apply for a grant at the district level and receive matching funds. And we make that available to all our clubs, all 43 clubs in our district. Yes. And then internationally, there is also matching funds. So when you run a project internationally, you don't have to fundraise for the entire amount. You fundraise for a certain portion, you can get a grant from our district, and then the foundation also provides grants for international projects. Yeah. So there's 2 levels of grants and matching, which makes Rotary math something pretty interesting.
That's right.
Yes.
And I think that's how, once again, going back to the communities, right? Because I know, for example, in Okotoks, the as you know, acronyms. So we have the Rotary Youth Entrepreneurial Campaign 1, and I think we have RYLA, which is Rotary Youth Leadership Award.
Yes.
Which is impactful to our local youth, right? So youth can apply for it. I think for RYAC it is 13 to 15. I can't think of the age for the RYLA camp. I think it's just taken place actually. But youth can apply for this and they don't have to invest any money. So it's not, it's not based on income. Any youth within the community can apply for this camp. Specific to RIAC, they get to go away for a whole week. They learn how to be an entrepreneur, and they get to have their own personal growth and they can bring those skills back to them. And that's all because of the foundation and grants and access to everything. So making that little impact within our own communities with our youth, and then that growth happens, right?
That's right. We have so much support for youth, both in our district and internationally. So you talked about RIAC, which is the Entrepreneur Camp. I was there last summer on Sales Day. So at the end of the week, these teenagers have gone through the whole week of learning about themselves, of building their self-esteem, their confidence, and then learning the business skills required to sell a product. And it was very interesting. I got to choose the winner. Woohoo! That was that was a lot of fun. But there were 10 teams, and these young adults, they're getting close to adulthood. They were really inspiring, and they had grown so much in just 1 week. So RIAC is great. RILA is another leadership program for youth. In our district, we also have RIPEN, which is the Rotary. Oh, geez. I'm going to have to think about acronyms. Crazy in Rotary. But this one is for kids who haven't come out of their shell. And they just need that one experience of someone helping them hold up a mirror and go, wow, look at who you are. And that's another weekend camp. So we have support for that. And anyone who wants to apply for those should just get in touch with their local Rotary Club and they can get sponsorship for it. And so we talked about RIAC. We also have a program for career and financial wellness. And that happens, I think, in the summertime. And that's a whole week course as well. And again, it's at no expense to the youth, given that there's a Rotary Club sponsoring them. So get in touch with your local Rotary Club because they might be helping with that. I know that there are 2 Rotary Clubs that do stay-in-school mentorship for kids from grade 6 all the way up to high school. And the mentors follow these kids for that entire time. So you build a really great relationship with a young person who is at risk. But the teachers who select them know that if this kid just had someone to meet with once a month, just to say, how are you doing? Where do you need help? And just to follow them, that they will stay in school. And when you stay in school and you graduate from high school, it already puts you at a higher income bracket. If you don't finish high school, you are now going to stay stuck in that cycle of poverty. So at the end of high school, the kid gets a scholarship to go to post-secondary education. Doesn't have to be university. They can choose a post-secondary of their choice. And so we help them financially to get into the next step in their life. And then you mentioned the youth exchange. We actually have 2 different youth exchange programs. One is family to family. So the 16, 17-year-old who would leave here goes to a family internationally, stays for a month, and then the kid at the other end comes and stays with the family here in Canada for another month, and they do that in the summer. But the RIACs, did I get that right? RIACs, Rotary Youth Exchange Program, the full year one, is nothing but spectacular. It really is life-changing for a 16, 17-year-old to go and live in a country for an entire year. And often those countries do not have English as the main language. So they come back knowing the culture, knowing themselves, being more confident, independent, knowing another language. And it really changes their perspective on the world and their place in the world and how far they can go. Then there's one more.
Okay.
And this is for perhaps a little older youth, but we do have what's called a global grant scholarship program where our district will fund their postgraduate work in one of the 7 areas of focus in another country. So just recently, Samaya Miller came back from Cambridge. She did a master's degree there in educational opportunities. And she was a youth exchange student, as a matter of fact, and she had applied for this graduate program and got accepted. So she got to go to Cambridge on a scholarship, which was awesome.
That's amazing. So I think you and I could talk Rotary for hours.
Yes.
I just want to sum up. So, I mean, Rotary is obviously good with our local communities, for our youth, our own personal growth, leadership, particularly women, and then internationally. Is there anything else that you'd want our listeners to know about Rotary today?
Rotary has changed. It used to be if you were the CEO of a company, you were a business owner. I think those were the 2 big things. And a man, that you would be accepted in Rotary. And that you would have to get an invitation by someone to join Rotary. That has all changed. Yes, you can be those people in those significant careers, but you can also be a stay-at-home mom. You can also be someone who works in a bigger company, but not the CEO. It is basically open to anybody who wants to make a difference in the world, who has time, talent, and treasure at whatever level works for them. The other myth is that I always have people looking at me, my gosh, you do so much, you do so much. I choose to do this much, and I'm retired. So this is why I do so much Rotary, but you don't have to do Rotary 5 days a week. You can choose whatever level it is that you will be engaged. And as long as it speaks to you and you feel like you're making a difference and the club that you join is welcoming and you feel like you belong, that's Rotary today.
You belong at Rotary.
You belong at Rotary.
Yeah. I think that's a nice way to end it off, I think.
I think so. I think I'm going to borrow that, as a matter of fact. Watch my next Facebook post.
I will have a look at it. Manon, thank you so much for talking all about Rotary with me today. And to any of our viewers, number 1, don't forget to like and subscribe. And number 2, go have a look at your local Rotary Club and see if it's a place you belong. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Belinda.